So if you think the Supreme Court fight over Roe v. Wade is the issue, then you haven't been paying attention. If you think the whole battle right now is, oh my gosh, is this person going to overturn Roe v. Wade? Is that what this is all about? Then you've been misled. And if you think that keeping a woman's right to choose is at the top of the heap for all of these discussions and this battle for Amy Coney Barrett right now in the Supreme Court, then you're missing the real story. You see, both Democrats and Republicans for years love to trot out this argument as the reason that they're so upset about trying to approve this particular candidate or that particular candidate for the Supreme Court vacancy. They trot it out all the time. They try to pretend that it's about culture. They try to pretend it's a culture war, right? And sure, it's an important issue, absolutely. But that's not really what's going on here. It's all a smokescreen. In fact, they want to distract you from the real story. And the real story is that corporations, corporate rights, take up about 70% of all Supreme Court cases. 70%. The cases that come before the Supreme Court have to do with corporations versus workers. Corporations versus workers' rights. 70%. In fact, almost all of the big cases that come before the Supreme Court in one way or another have to do with protecting big business over the little guy. Time and time again. Or even the states. Can the state walk all over these people? But most of the time it's big money and it's big corporations that make it all the way to the Supreme Court. Time and again. That's why over the weekend, Republican strategist Patrick Ruffini tweeted this out and said, look, let's be clear here. Confirming Amy Coney Barrett is probably worth more than winning the election. And it's definitely worth more than whatever marginal cost might be incurred at this point. He's a Republican strategist. So what does he mean? He means that it's fine if President Trump loses, because what's going to have more of an effect on the American businesses and corporations and protecting conservative issues is that we have a Supreme Court stacked in that favor. That a president, really, that's inconsequential. And he's right. Because even if Joe Biden becomes president, not much is going to change. He might enact his tax code, his new tax law, if he can get that through the Senate, which would only tax people making over $400,000 a year, which CNBC calls middle class, laughably. Good old CNBC, which is just a television network for the rich Wall Street types. Yeah, they called it basically the middle class. $400,000 a year. They wrote an article talking about how if you live in New York City, that's like poverty. Nevertheless, that's the big focus, is the Supreme Court. Now, Ruffini's party can basically lose the presidential election, but still win the GOP long-term battle, which is stacking the Supreme Court with conservative justices and making sure that corporations are protected. You know, they want to pretend, and they get to do this in middle America because it doesn't fly. If Republicans were going to go out to the podium, if President Trump was going to go out to middle America, conservative Oklahoma and other places and say, I'm making sure that, I'm a pro-life president and I'm going to make sure that our Supreme Court reflects that. You're going to get huge applause lines. But can you imagine if President Trump actually told the truth? If he went out and told the real story? Hey, everybody, thank you for having me tonight. I'm going to throw out some masks. You guys want a mask? Here's a mask. You want a mask? Here's a mask. I want to tell you, do you know that 70% of all cases that come before the Supreme Court are for big businesses versus the little guy, the workers? People be in the audience going, I don't know. I didn't know that. Yeah. And so I'm going to make sure that the Supreme Court is stacked with conservative justices that will protect those big corporations against you, the little worker. Can I get some applause? I don't know. Did I just hear what he said? Grandpa, did you hear that? Wait a second. I thought it was about Roe v. Wade. Huh? That's how they get you. That's how they get you. So, the Daily Poster, which is a newspaper, an online publication run by David Sirota, he's been doing great work. He's an excellent journalist. He's one of the few journalists actually calling attention to these types of stories. So good on you, David. I'd love to have him here on the show soon. He's been covering this. He says, so what does this actually mean if Amy Coney Barrett wins or becomes the Supreme? I don't know if you can call it being winning. But he says, this is because Barrett would fortify the Supreme Court as the government's most powerful rubber stamp for corporate interests' long-term agenda. While the confirmation fight has mostly focused on important social issues, the court deals more often with business and economic issues. Thank you, Matthew, for your super chat. Appreciate that. So you see that? They want to talk in these confirmation hearings all about Roe v. Wade and the Affordable Care Act. Important issues, but just a subset of all of the cases that they will continue to face. They face these not just at the Supreme Court level, but this is why Mitch McConnell is so focused on stacking the court. He's not doing it for women's rights. He's not doing it for Roe v. Wade. Wake up. He's doing it to make sure that all of his big corporate donors, I showed you the list yesterday of how many people donated tens of millions of dollars to his campaign, how many big energy companies, oil companies, gas companies have donated money to Mitch McConnell over the years and continue to do so. And then the Supreme Court takes up these exact issues in favor or against big corporations. In fact, interestingly, there is a new case that's about to hit the Supreme Court. It's already in federal court, and Amy Coney Barrett had to recuse herself. Yeah, it has to do with Shell Oil because her dad is a lawyer for Shell Oil. So she had to recuse herself from that case. I'm going to go home and talk to Dad on the weekend barbecue. You're representing Shell Oil. I'm the federal judge that's going to hear that case. She had to recuse herself. Now it's heading to the Supreme Court. Shell Oil against workers. What will happen? Will she recuse herself? We don't know. Question didn't really even come up. Will she have to recuse herself? No, they're more interested in talking about Roe v. Wade. And President Trump wanting mail-in ballots and all of this other, which is all important stuff, but it's all social, cultural stuff that they get to couch these debates on. So what's going on right now is that there are millions of dollars being spent by these shady, dark groups that are funneling millions of dollars into the Supreme Court to basically pick the next nominee. Yeah, that's right. In fact, they're basically screening the nominees, these different groups, like the Federalist Society. They're telling then President Trump and Mitch McConnell, here's our selections. So they're not even picking them. They're getting them from outsized money groups, picking their nominees. And then they go along with it. And then what happens? Well, then they're funneling tens of millions of dollars into television ad campaigns to try to put these people on the Supreme Court, all in favor of, and we don't even know where this money is coming from. It's all hidden money. It's all shady, dark money. Where's this money coming from? It's coming from secret big corporations. It's coming from corporations that want their interests protected at the Supreme Court. They're buying favor with the Supreme Court. So all of these big companies can run roughshod over American workers. They can pollute the environment. They can dump in protected lands. They can have laws rolled back in order to protect their business interests. Oh yeah, it's happening. It's been happening for years, and it's only going to get worse. So corporate profits can continue to go up while the American worker gets screwed. So yesterday, Good for him. Senator Whitehouse yesterday took the time. What's interesting, you get 30 minutes. You get 30 minutes during the Supreme Court if you are one of the senators. You have 30 minutes to question the nominee. So instead of questioning the nominee, Senator Whitehouse put on a show. He actually had prefabricated boards with graphs and pie charts and other information where he talked all about this shady stuff. But he started it off by talking about how this is all a puppet show. And it was the perfect analogy, I thought, to say that, yes, we're in this little room right now, but there are outside puppet masters who are just pulling our strings, flooding this whole system with tons of millions of dollars. And the American people need to know about it. That's why I'm doing this story today. Because as a business show, you need to know as an American how you're being lied to by the mainstream media, how you're being lied to by your politicians, how they're using taxpayer money to line the pockets of these companies. You all need to know this stuff. So here was Senator Whitehouse talking about the puppet approach. Listen.
The little screen that you're looking at are a little bit like the frame of a puppet theater. And if you only look at what's going on in the puppet theater, you're not going to understand the whole story. You're not going to understand the real dynamic of what is going on here. And you're certainly not going to understand forces outside of this room who are pulling strings and pushing sticks and causing the puppet theater to react.
He's right. So what is he talking about? Well, he's talking about the millions of dollars that are flowing into the Supreme Court to pick to pick these nominees. And we don't know where it's coming from. Don't the American people have a right to know? That would be one thing. We'd love to know where this money is coming from. How are they influencing our Supreme Court with only 9 justices? And where's this money coming from? And who are you working for? Like, is Shell Oil trying to curry favor with the Supreme Court by placing a nominee on the Supreme Court that could, if that case comes before the Supreme Court, it's like mafia style. Who's the mafia talk to on the jury? They only need to pick one, so we get a hung jury. That's how it works. So he brought out his little charts yesterday, and he went through this whole process talking about these different groups and how this all works. Watch this.
Who have said that's what you want to do.
So how does this scheme work?
Are people going about doing it? What is the scheme here? Let me start with this one. In all cases, there's big anonymous money behind various lanes of activity. One lane of activity is through the conduit of the Federalist Society. Was managed by a guy named Leonard Leo, and it's taken over the selection of judicial nominees. How do we know that to be the case? Because Trump has said so over and over again. His White House counsel said so. So we have an anonymously funded group controlling judicial selection run by this guy, Leonard Leo. Then in another lane, we have, again, anonymous funders running through something called the Judicial Crisis Network, which is run by Carrie Severino, and it's doing PR and campaign ads for Republican judicial nominees.
Yeah, so who the hell are these groups? Where is this money coming from mysteriously? We don't know. No law on the books that lets us know. What do these ads look like? Well, millions of dollars spent to blanket the airwaves in these types of ads in Washington and other places. Here's one of them. Amy Coney Barrett.
A judge must apply the law as written. Judges are not policymakers. They must be resolute in setting aside any policy views they might hold.
Amy Coney Barrett follows the law and ignores politics, and she never forgets what matters most.
While I am a judge, I'm better known back home as a room parent, carpool driver, and birthday party planner.
She's the perfect choice to fill Justice Ginsburg's seat.
There you go. So Yeah, that's just one of the ads from the Justice Crisis Network. Crisis. Justice Crisis. They're making it sound that it really is a crisis. Yeah, big corporations are just under fire. They're really suffering. It's a crisis. Garbage. Thank you, Lori Wheeler, for your super chat. I appreciate it. So, the exchanges that unfolded yesterday were pretty interesting. Amy Coney Barrett is a wicked smart lawyer. She's a wicked smart judge. Very smart. She's so smart that she pretended yesterday to really not have a position on just about anything. She was asked so many questions where she basically didn't want to take a position on it. She said, I want to just review each case, which is a admirable thing to say in part. You're going to take each case on its merits. But when you're asked about certain rulings that have already happened, do you have an opinion on that? You're a protege of Antonin Scalia. He thought that Roe v. Wade was ruled poorly. Do you agree? Good question. She won't answer it. She didn't answer it. She didn't answer a lot of questions yesterday. But some very important questions like climate change. These are important questions, not, I know like the conservative networks wanted to say, this was all political theater yesterday, Democrats asking her about climate change. Yeah, there's actually a good reason they're asking her about climate change. It's not about the philosophical idea of climate change. It's about when you're facing like an Exxon or a Shell oil company who is in trouble for dumping into waterways or fracking and destroying lands and wetlands and people's farms and other things like that, or carbon emissions, or God knows, the list goes on and on and on. You're going to see those cases before the Supreme Court. How do you feel about it? Should this company be allowed to run roughshod over the American people, pollute waterways, destroy air, fisheries? Good questions. She didn't want to answer it. She said, I have no real feelings on climate change. I don't have any firm beliefs on climate change. I have no firm beliefs on it. How do you have no firm beliefs on climate change? It's not even a belief. It's a fact. It's like asking, do you believe in ceilings and floors? No, I'm standing on one. It's a fact. So the Justice Crisis Network says it's going to spend $10 million supporting Barrett's confirmations. Yeah. And because of the reporting at the Daily Poster from David Sirota, they spent as much as $27 million to block President Obama's 2016 court pick, Merrick Garland, and install conservative Justice Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh on the High Court. Daily Poster previously reported that the Justice Crisis Network received $15 million from a single anonymous donor between July 2018 and July 2019, which was the tax period covering the Kavanaugh fight. But we don't know who it is. We don't know who it is. So Senator Whitehouse was asked about why did he use all 30 minutes of his time yesterday to talk about this shady money when you didn't really want to spend time asking Amy Coney Barrett any questions. Here is his response.
Today was the first opportunity for senators on the Judiciary Committee like you to publicly question Judge Barrett, but during your allotted 30-minute time frame, you didn't ask a single question. Why not?
Because I wanted to make the case to the public of something that we've been looking at in the Senate for quite some time, which is the role of big special interest dark money that is circulating around the Supreme Court, that now controls the selection of Supreme Court justices, that pours huge checks, like a $17 million donation, into funding TV ad campaigns to support the nominees, and then to show how the same groups fund artificial front groups that turn up before the court to file briefs as if they were separate, but it's an orchestrated chorus funded by the same interests that are putting their people on the court.
Good for him, Senator Whitehouse. One of the few Democrats actually talking about this issue. The thing is, the problem here is that, Democrats they're spineless. They're spineless. So how are they letting this go on? It's because Democrats are spineless sponges. And they're willing to soak up as much money from these corporate donors as the Republicans are. And then when it comes time to these Supreme Court nominations, they put on a big show and they pretend, and then they just allow that Supreme Court justice to go right through. They get out there and they pretend a little bit. They want to talk about Roe v. Wade. They want to talk about Affordable Care Act. They talk about some of those more cultural-based issues, right? And then they move along. They confirm that. Then it's going to be a 6-3 conservative court, and then big corporations can just ramrod the American people. No stopping them now. They can just run roughshod over the American people. Workers' rights, good luck with that. That's what this battle is really about. So when people want to bring up Roe v. Wade, just tell them to shut up. If you have a family member that is ignorant about this issue, please pull them aside and educate them. And explain to them, no, Mom, it's not actually about Roe v. Wade. Here's what it's really about. Did you know that 70% of all cases that come before the Supreme Court are all big business or economic related? And it's big business versus workers, always. Or big business versus the environment. It's what it is. All of them. It's one of the most important, I think it's one of the most important issues. And, the way that Democrats are bending over, taking it up the tailpipe, is sickening. But they're all spineless. And yes, I'm sure she's an excellent judge. But if you don't have any firm beliefs on climate change, and your dad's a lawyer for Shell Oil, and you're a protege of Antonin Scalia, where do you think she's going to come down when there's a business versus workers? That's what the real issue is. Please don't forget it. And please don't forget to smash that like button. Please, please, please. And subscribe to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. YouTube tells me that 70% of you are not subscribers. You watch, but you haven't subscribed, or it's just being suggested to you, and you find us for the first time. Well, go ahead and subscribe and hit that little bell notification so that you'll know when we go live. We're live every morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time. We've got a great group of people who join us. We've got awesome channel members. So thanks to all of our new channel members today. I really appreciate it. You can become a channel member very easily by just going to morninginvest.com/join. You can support independent journalism, covering the stories you're not going to hear on the mainstream media. Because you get these mainstream media channels like MSNBC and CNN and so forth. They're pumping millions of dollars to people like Mitch McConnell. We just learned yesterday, Rupert Murdoch, huge financier of Mitch McConnell, who is pushing to get these types of big corporate, Supreme Court nominees there to protect the interests of big corporations. It's all part of it. Do you see how that works? Mainstream media, run by billionaires, sends money to senators and members of the House of Representatives and presidential candidates. They get Supreme Court justices on the Supreme Court and federal benches so that when they have cases that come up in front of those benches, it supports corporations, not the American people. And that's just one example. I hope as much, you watch this show, maybe hoping to shed some light on stories that you might not otherwise see. If you want mainstream media stuff, you know where to go find that stuff.